I think we are 6 o'clock on the dot. Good evening, everyone. Welcome, welcome to another YLC Ideal Digital Conversation. We are closing off the month of June, which is Youth Month, so it's very fitting that our conversation or our topic today is navigating free education in South Africa. So welcome everyone, and I hope most of you here in the YLC community managed to join and support one of our YLC member, Zintle Romano, who today was part of the launch of the Generation Equality with UN Women. It was a really great event. The conversation and the events will start it off and will continue for the next couple of days. So do go onto our YLC website to look at all the other details on the conversations that will be taking place. And today I just want to welcome, my job is just to welcome everyone, all of you, and our panelists today. I'm very happy to have them here. One of them is my alumni sister, Pindile Ndlovu. She's an OLAG alumni like myself, and then also the director of OLAG as well. So very happy to have them here today. And I will hand it over to Kosi, who will be facilitating today's discussion. Thank you.
Everyone, and actually welcome to today's YLC session. Today we are discussing, I think, a very topical issue. So Refule touched on it briefly. I mean, it's the Youth Month. This is what the youth of 1976 fought for. They fought for us to actually gain access to education. And, financial inclusion has been a problem. I mean, looking back at our history. So I think today's topic is quite interesting. It's quite relevant, and it's a beautiful way to actually close the month. I would like to welcome a special welcome to our panelists. I'm so excited. I mean, reading up on their brief and their bio, I'm so excited to actually hear them share, their pearls of wisdom. They're quite well known in this area. I mean, this is what they actually specialize in. I'd like to welcome our chairperson and acknowledge her. She is online. Our chairperson, Sis Trifosa Ramano. I'd like to welcome and acknowledge our board and all our committee and subcommittee members. I'd like to have a special welcome to you guys. Please engage with us. We do have a chat session. Your voice is very important to us, and we'd like to hear. I mean, this is an open discussion with everyone involved, and we'd like to hear from you. Just to borrow from, my name is Kosi, by the way, Kosi Bambisa. I know it's written there, and I'll be facilitating the session today. Just to borrow from Nelson Mandela, I think he said something very profound in relation to education. He said, education is the most powerful weapon which we can use to then change the world. The power of education extends beyond development of skills, the skills we need for economic success. It can contribute to nation building and reconciliation. A good head and a good heart are always a formidable combination. I think in what we've been going through as a country, what is happening with the rest of the world, with COVID, I mean, limiting economic growth, knowing our history as well, in South Africa, a lot of people are unemployed, a lot of youth are sitting at home unemployed. A lot of them are quite intelligent. A lot of them are quite talented. But one of the limiting factors that they've had is access to free education. What we've shared with you guys as a brief, I suppose, introduction of the topic on our website is the fact that we had fees must fall. Did it yield the results that we're looking for? Right? It began in mid-2015. We had Blade Zimande finally announcing April this year that is actually going to increase the budget to by 10 billion. So we're excited, we're happy, but is it sufficient? So you guys are not here to hear from me. you hear to hear from our panelists, and I'd like to actually just introduce them formally, read their bio, so that everyone is quite aware of who they are. I know who they are, and I'd like to share that with you as well. I'd like to start reading. Sorry, guys, navigating technology. um, I'd like to introduce Usis Gugu here. Usis Gugu is currently the director of Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy, in short, OLAG. She joined the organization after a long and distinguished career as the CEO of Save the Children South Africa, one of the leading child rights organizations in the world, operating in 120 countries. I mean, if that is not knowledge that we all need to tap into, I don't know what is, right? Previously, she worked at the Department of Basic Education, where she was the Deputy Director General, primarily responsible for social mobilization and support services. Usis Gugu was also one of the pioneers for the biggest adult literacy campaign in South Africa, Kharikhude, the recapitalization of vocational colleges and the National School Nutrition Program. Amongst other qualifications, Osiskuku is the proud possessor of an MSc in Organizational Change and Development from the University of Manchester in the UK, and a postgraduate diploma in adult education from Wits, my alumni, and Management Advanced Program, also from the Wits Business School. In 2016, she was appointed Vice Chancellor of the UNESCO Bureau of the Global Alliance for Literacy. And in 2017, in recognition for her passion for reading, she was appointed by the Minister of Basic Education as the Literacy Ambassador for the Read to Lead campaign. She is also a member of the South African Human Rights Commission's Children's Rights Advisory Committee. She recently been appointed to the Council of Rhodes University by the Minister of Higher Education. She's also a member of the Institute of Directors of South Africa. Usiskuku is a member of South African Heads of Independent School, shortly known as SAHISA, and is on the executive of the Central Region of the Independent Schools of Association of Southern Africa, ISASA. She's also the chairperson of the Board of Directors of the Sexual Reproductive Health and Rights Trust, and a profound passionate and committed or a profound passion and commitment for the realization of the rights for children. She has also featured in a number of magazines, including People's Magazines, Oprah's Daughters documentary, Business Africa Online, the NGO Whisperer, and a blog on Phenomenal Woman. She has been a Forbes Africa panelist. Finally, guys, I know this is a mouthful, and I know this is exciting for everyone to hear. She has been recently requested to endorse a book on career guidance, How to Go to Work, by Steve Haynes and Lucy Clayton. Usiskuku is an avid reader. I mean, we know this, and enjoys traveling and learning about different cultures. She is passionate about supporting young women and their development. Um, Before I hand over just to Usiskuku to just introduce herself and her views on the topic, I'll just also introduce our other panelist, Usispindi. Usispindi. Yes, now I can see. I like seeing friendly faces. Usispindi has been recognized as a brand ambassador at Brand South Africa Play Your Part initiative. She represents the latest in a series of accomplishments. She is the founder and director at Bheki Zenzo Foundation. Mrs. Pindile Tapula grew up in the township called Umlazi in Durban. The drive for empowerment of women and young people was kindled by her experience as a student at the OLEG. Say hi to your mommy. She is passionate about community development, pertaining skills and education for the youth. She is experienced in driving life-changing community development campaigns with Bheki Foundation, impacting 250 young people in Diepsloot. Pindile now leads a team at the Thabo Mbeki Foundation on crowd campaign towards the building of Thabo Mbeki Presidential Library. I'd like for her to actually also, before she goes anywhere, also introduce the work that they're doing there on the digital campaign. I think it's quite remarkable that what they're doing there. Her work also involves coordinating a community development project that includes the agribusiness support and offering online learning to the rural and township areas. Mrs. Tapula is passionate about serving, and she serves mothers from all walks of life through a recent initiative called Working Moms Club. She is a renowned speaker and a moderator with a keen interest on self-leadership. I will start off by giving over to Usisgugu to just share, her pearls of knowledge with the rest of us. And then from there, I'll also then hand over to Mrs. Pindile Tapula. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much, Kosi, and good evening to everyone. And thank you to the chair for heading or headlining this great institution. I'm actually quite excited. I never heard about it before, so I'm going to be a great follower, because I think platforms like this, where we discuss matters relating to young people, especially around education, are very important. Just by way of making my opening remarks, I've been thinking about where to start, so I'm just going to give you my story with the hope that it will indicate what my take on the topic is. I grew up at the height of struggle. So I was born in the 60s. So when the passed laws, when the massacre in Sharpeville happened around the time, and obviously I was young, but I navigated the 70s. I was still young when Bantu education struggles started. And then I came into being in the 80s. So that's when I started realizing that there's something wrong in this country. I was raised by a mother and a dad who loved me very much, but my dad loved me as he did. He had an alcohol problem, so he never really contributed much, but he was not abusive. He just wasn't able to help us financially. So for all intents and purposes, I was raised by my mother with my brother. And she was determined that she was going to take us to the best schools at that time. Remember the era that I'm talking about. And so we sold ice creams. We sold, not ice cream, ice block. We call it, it's Nganda at that time. We sold my pieces just so that we could go to school. So my high school and university, I went to Inanda Seminary, and my university was 100% funded by my mother. And my story is not unique. I think a lot of people at that time were raised by parents who struggled to make ends meet. And when I wanted to do medicine, at that time you couldn't go to university of, whether it's University of Natal or Wits, without applying to the Minister of Education at that time, Rene Skuman, who would give you permission to go to a white university. Otherwise, you either had to go to Fort Hare, University of Zululand, Tefluop, etc. So because I wanted to do medicine, we applied. I didn't get my response until I was at Fort Hare, and that response also was taking me to Medunsa. So that was another thing that jarred me, that why can't I go to university that I want to go to, because I've passed matric, whatever matric looked like. And I remember my first day because I was doing pre-med at Fort Hare. I went in, and this lecturer just came in and said, half of you are going to fail, are not going to make it first year. For the half that goes through second year, half of you are not going to make it. So already our future was predetermined by someone who had power, not because we were not clever or because we were not coping at university. And I tell that because after that, for about 4 years, so we left Fort Hare, we didn't finish. I went to the University of Zululand when the University of Zululand massacre happened, and I lost sight of my eye. I went to UKZN, where it was expelled. Education has always been a site of struggle. So if anyone wants to attack a nation, during apartheid, during now, they will attack the schools, they will attack universities. So it's not by chance that universities at the time were either closed by, were sent military people, were sent there, etc. So it's important to understand the importance of education. I'm not even talking about free education at this point. I'm talking about education and how it is and can be a game changer. So that's the first thing. And I started realizing that, so I became an activist and, fought for quality education. At that time, we were fighting for free and compulsory education. Fast forward, we had, I'll talk about my FET college's time when we have questions, because that was my first foray into free education. Because at that time, we felt that young people are not sheep. So they're not all academically inclined. So you need to have streams. You have to have a vocational stream, you have to have an academic stream, so that they can achieve whatever they want to achieve. But the fact that I'm vocationally inclined doesn't mean I must go and do some 2 months program and do woodwork, and then you condemn me into poverty. So part of the recapitalization of colleges was to make sure that there's access for that particular group of people, but that they have quality education. And we negotiated with NSFAS that it's free. So that's the second point that I want to say, that even though the struggle started as a struggle for quality, for quality education, and I want to say that all of the struggles, whatever face they presented, and at the bottom of it, it was it's a struggle for education. You can't have economic freedom if you don't have quality education. You can't have quality healthcare if you don't. So however it presented itself, at the core of it, it has always been quality education. So my thing is, we fought for quality compulsory education. We ended up with no-fee schools, which were provided access to a number of people, but they are so bad. They don't have infrastructure. They don't have quality teachers. They don't have textbooks. So that access is meaningful, because what it does is that it delays those poor children even further. So access to education without quality education is meaningless. And we're learning that from the free and compulsory education. It is the same with universities. If you have access and there is no quality of provision, it is going to be meaningless. But also quality of education with no opening of the economy and no economic growth, you have what we have now, where you have young people who have spent years and years studying, making sure that they have the qualifications because they think their lives are going to be better in future. And what do they hit? A roadblock. There are no jobs. There are no livelihoods. And in fact, they become a burden to the very same people that sacrifice their lives. So I'm saying the struggle for free education is an all-encompassing struggle. And it's a struggle that started a long time ago. What we need to do is to continue the momentum and understand that it is as much about free education as it is about quality education and access to the economy. Thank you, Kosi.
Thank you so much, Sis Gugu. I mean, what I could gather from there, I was trying to take notes as you're speaking, and I think it's quite profound. I like the fact that we're a women organization, and the fact that you take pride in the fact that your mother raised you, and that is the starting and the basis of everything that has happened. I like the fact that you use, and I'd like for you to, when we get to questions and sessions answers, I mean, you speak about the fact that if you want to attack a country, if you want to attack the youth, then you attack education, especially quality education. I think that resonated so much with me, and I think it's a key takeaway for all of us. So when we come back for a questions and sessions answer, I really would like for us to dig into that and just find out a bit more from that. I'm now going to hand over to Usis Pindile to also just give us a brief brief overview. And then, guys, please send through the questions. This is an open discussion, and we've got the best on the panel. So please do start typing out your questions as Usispindile just takes us through her brief introduction. Thanks.
Thank you so much. What an incredible honor. What a tough act to follow. As we were reading the bio, in fact, I thought to myself, oh shoot, I wish I was still at OLAG just to be led by Usiskuku. I left OLAG in 2014, and that's when I left OLAG feeling like I can change the world. I was so energetic, vibrant, ready to take on the world, and I went to Wits. And for me, it was just a natural fit then to join student activism. And that was in 2015 when the famous Fismas Fall happened. I remember we would wake up students at Rhodes while they were sleeping, bang into their doors and tell them, wake up, you sellouts, we are shutting down. And we would all go into the gates and we'd shut down. And some students would even fight. No, we want to go to class. It's my right. I have a right to education. Why are you stopping me? So we were not only fighting the system, but we were fighting ourselves, just so that we can have an impactful protest. But I agree with what Sisku has said about quality education. When I listened to our patron at the foundation, the Thabo Mbeki Foundation, he keeps talking about this phenomena of unemployed graduates. And he says there is no such thing as unemployed graduates. We have unemployable graduates. Our education system is not geared to really talk to the lived experiences or the shortage of skills. It's not an economic driver at this point. It's almost as if we are teaching people how to create typewriters when we are all having laptops in a way. We are not able to make sure that our education feeds to what is needed in the country. So for me, as I work with young people in the townships and the rural areas, offering them digital education, it's for us is very important that we talk about this quality education. And quality education is not just about making sure that we focus on STEM solely. It is about looking at, for example, right now we're in the middle of a pandemic. What skills are needed? We have neglected nurses. They are not paid very well. We don't even honor them often. It's only now that we are seeing the importance and significance that they pay. It's all about that thing to say, let's make sure that our education knows how to recognize the different soft skills that are needed for the country to be able to move forward. So for me, that's very, very important. Another thing, and I will touch briefly on my background, right? I was born in KZN, and I was destined to fail. I was meant to, at the very best, be a cashier. Born in Mlazi, moving to Equator Heights at the age of 7, I was not meant to amount to much. I was meant to be a teen mom, highly unmotivated. But education changed my life. When I got those application forms to go to the Oprah Academy, it became my key, my ticket to the world, my ticket to escape poverty, to end the cycle. So for me, I feel like there is a disconnect in society. We don't value education a lot. We value instant gratification. We value materialism. We value being consumers for sure, but we don't really understand how education can be an equalizer. For the first time in my life, I was eating with a fork and knife, only because of the type of education that I was being offered. For the first time in my life, I was introduced to critical thinking because of that kind of education that I was in. I couldn't swim, and people think education is about books. It's about life skills, about simple thing like swimming. Like it's a basic life skill. But you have someone in Angela who doesn't even consider swimming. The only time they think about swimming is if they have to cross a river because it's a flat. So it is about understanding that education is not one-dimensional, it's complex, and we need to embrace it and see it as a key. Because once we see it as a key, we're not going to have an instance whereby fees must fall, students are protesting, the police are shooting at them. Because the police will understand that these are our children, we as their parents can't afford. So it's not a student issue, it's an economic issue, it's a social issue, it's a working class issue, that we can't afford this education. And I wish knowing what I know now, I wish I could go back and say, let's mobilize our parents better. Let's have them come to the table and let's talk. What did they do in 1976 that we can learn from, so that we can be able to have this impact? One of the questions you ask: did Fees Must Fall achieve what it wanted to achieve? And I don't want to be harsh and say no, because I was part of that generation. but but to be realistic, there's so much more that needs to be done. We can't get it done if we're all going to be going to the front lines and protesting. There has to be some students at the back who are going to be writing things. The reason why we have the freedom that we have now is because while others were protesting, people were writing the Freedom Charter. You know, people were writing things. So I would love for us to see education as something that we can all get our hands in and really try and make an impact as a unit, as a people, and find our different strengths in making sure that the protest, the movement stays alive and it moves forward. And we're not doing the same thing over and over and over again. 2015, people are getting arrested. Last year, people are getting arrested. Someone even died who was not even part of this. So for me, that's what I would just suggest we do. Thank you so much.
Sure, Pindile, I found myself, I was nodding so much because I could resonate with what you said. There's a lot of things that's happening in our society. And like you said, our society doesn't value education. And the people that are at the forefront and the people that are selling glitz and glamour are not promoting education. They're promoting a lifestyle without a backing of it. And I mean, it talks to a lot of things that's happening in our society, right? I think that is a different topic altogether, but it's one that I'm also very passionate about. I think what you spoke to right now, it resonates with everyone. It is an equalizer, and it talks back to what Sis Gugu was saying earlier on, when she said that when she got the access to education, although it was predestined by someone at that point in time. I mean, they created Bantu education to keep people oppressed. When she got that ability, to use that freedom, she utilized it. And I'd like to start maybe Ngosisku to just go back to that point where she was saying education is then used to oppress, access to quality education, or stripping that away from people. It's used as a tool for oppression. I'd like to just maybe dig a bit more on that. I mean, you've seen it from the department when you're on the Department of Education. You've seen it when you were working with children's rights. What does that do to the society, especially because we're still seeing the results now?
Thank you, because I raise that all the time, because I think sometimes, as Upindo was saying, we underestimate the impact of not learning, and I'm always careful to move from education to learning. One of the reasons why I was passionate about adult education and I spearheaded the literacy campaign was because, and at that time people used to joke and say, if you want to hide something from a Black person, hide it in a book. It's a joke, but it's not a joke. Because if you can't, my belief system is that you can't change what you don't know. I can't change apartheid if I don't know what apartheid does and what its dangers are. I can't change the education system if I don't understand what is good, bad, and ugly about the education system. So part of acquiring knowledge is acquiring the skills to understand what to change, how, and when. And the reason why I'm saying that the institutions were targeted is because when a child loses a year out of school, because that child loses, it's not just grade R or grade 1 that they lose. It's almost a generation, because from then on it's catch up. So when we talk about children that don't have early childhood development or that don't have a foundational knowledge, once they've lost it, they're always catching up. And the world is moving fast. So when you have to continue catching up and then COVID comes and it delays you even further, all of those things that you want, that are critical for your success as a country, for you to be able to put in place economic policies that will change the lot of your people. You can't do that if ungancwadanga. If you didn't go to school, you can't. What you will do is you will scream, you will howl, and the people that know, and I'll tell you this, I think I've always said there was magic in Bantu education, because what Bantu education did was to give us what they thought was necessary for us to know and continue to progress. So when they introduced Africans, it was not by accident. It wasn't because they wanted us to know their language. It's because they understood that if you don't know your mother tongue, you can't access further learning better than you would if you start learning in your mother tongue. But they know that because the Verkrante, the Boere bond, was stemmed in education. They learned. That's why if you see solidarity now, what do? They build universities, because they understand the importance of education, investing in education. So when we talk about education being a societal issue, it shouldn't be something that is you see, we take things very casually. You know, the first thing we ban, also when we're angry, we ban a school. I'm like, why? Why are you banning a school, something that is going to be, and I know we're angry, and I know you know all of those things. So I'm saying, if you want to put either to advance a nation or to delay a nation, you hold education. You can open up economies all you want, but if people are not skilled enough to access those opportunities, they are not going to advance as a people. We in 2021 are still playing catch up from the damages of Bantu education. And it is upon us as this generation to then say, what is it that we need to do to make sure that we are completely focused on educating our people from scratch? And it is a pity that the ball is dropping when we are in power. So that's what I mean. I mean, if you want to delay me, you hide my books, you hide everything, then I won't know what I'm talking about. And you'll continue doing the algorithms that make all of these WebEx work. And me, I'll be like clapping on the side because, you know, I haven't been to school.
And I think, you know, my dad always says, you know, in a land of the blind, a one-eyed man is king, right? Like you said, in a land where we don't have skills, where we don't have education, which has been taken, you know, people can then oppress you because that one-eyed man is king. And I think this is what Sispendile was touching on, you know, when she was talking about the fact that you grow up in the society, and already because of your surroundings, right, your future is sort of predestined, right? And then if you don't have that access to education, then that's it for you, right? You lose hope, you are limited to where you are. And I think I'd like to just, for you, Sispindi, to just jump in there to actually say, when the youth of 1976 they fought for Bantu education, right? And then we went and we got our freedom, right? We were able to vote in 1994. And then 2014, here you are, you get into university, you're excited, and you still have to fight. And this is how many years later that we are still fighting the same struggle. And this is actually even the elite top that even make it to university to be able to fight for fees must fall. Other people are dropped along the way from the basic education. I mean, Usiskuku mentioned it, Uguti, if you are busy missing steps in between, then you are busy playing catch up, you know. So maybe let's just touch on that. What happens if the foundation, I mean, is not laid there? What happens when you don't have the skills to actually just operate in the society, and then you are dropped into university where you have to fight for financial inclusion, as well as, I suppose, societal acceptance. I'd just like to hear from you on that one.
No, you're definitely right. We are playing catch up, and I'll give you just an example. In our project, we call it the Profituro project because our funders are from Spain, and they are called Profituro. So it's a Profituro project where we're giving kids from the township and rural areas some tablets, so that they can access digital education. So we give them these gadgets. When we say, okay, these are the tablets, these are the computers, projector screens, do best. The teachers, the parents, the students, they take the tablets, they put it in the closet. They don't use it. We come back 2 weeks later. Okay, you guys, have you been playing around? Have you been navigating? And they say, no, we don't know how to use these things. We don't know how to use these things. So we're just putting them there in the closet. So when we come back, you don't say we were selling them. We are playing catch up. When we are having, for example, Zoom meetings with them, for me to get them to unmute themselves, a hassle. I like to say, we are playing catch up. So for us to say free education in tertiary only is an injustice to us, a disservice, because you have people in first year who are calling you, passing address to say, hey, how do I attach a file? I don't know how to do that. So we have to make sure that we don't almost do segments and focus on the one group and not on the other group, because we are going to lose a generation. And here's the thing: saying free education must be for tertiary education is almost saying, do Black lives matter or all lives matter? It's not fair. It's not mutually exclusive. It's a parallel thing. It's a parallel thing. I'm so sorry, my son is joining me. Really, our duty then as a society is to make sure that we go to the early development centers and say, how do we then introduce education that is meaningful? So teach them book education, but also introduce them to skills that will help them and be resilient as they grow. We've heard that grade 4s can't read comprehension. That is not something that we can accept. It's absolutely nothing that we can accept. So we have to be able to say, let's bring the Department of Education, let's bring the private sector, let's bring the tech sector and say, guys, how do we ensure we give these people free but quality education? Because with this pandemic and schools closing, you are finding students at home. Yes, they may have the data, but they don't have the network signal. So they can't even participate in this 4IR, this new era, and they're paralyzed, and they can't access this type of education. So who then ensures there is proper signal, this broadband connectivity? Who ensures that? Is it just the government? Is it the private? Who is it? And it's not government or the private sector or the taxpayer. It's government and the private sector and the people. And that is when you can actually start striking strategic partnerships, public-private partnerships, where we all come together to say, this is our goal. We believe in education, and we believe in giving our people quality education so that they can solve our own problems. So we have to work together, and it's easy for people to then have effective, efficient programs so that we can be able to improve this education system. I'm saying a lot, but yeah.
Actually, you're saying quite relevant things. It's quite relevant, the mere fact that if you have a tablet, right? There's always this picture going around where someone has a wheelbarrow, but they're trying to give this person a wheelbarrow with a round wheel, and this person who's got a square wheel is busy saying no. So if you've got a tool in front of you and you don't know how to use it or how it can make your life easier, you then neglect it.
Mm.
And then you get stuck in this process of hardship, right? And it's a cycle, and it never ends. And I think one of the things I always say to the youth that I mentor is the fact that that cycle, when it happens, it kills hope, right? And you can never do anything without hope. You know, when you kill someone's hope or when you kill someone's faith,
Mm.
I mean, they basically give up on themselves. You look at the youth of South Africa, most of them have given up on themselves. Nyaupe didn't just happen as an accident or someone just introducing a drug. It's a result of someone that just, you know, gave up on themselves and they gave up on life. And you know, so just to touch into our Q&A session, and I think any of you can just take it. Ati says to us, Scandinavian countries have free educational countries such as Sweden actually pay people to get a tertiary education. Why can't we learn from these or learn from their funding models?
Mm. You know, because it's always having been in education for as long as I've been, I don't think the challenge in South Africa is absence of resources. Everyone will tell you that education has the biggest slice in the budget. Of course, the bulk of it is for teachers because that's where the skills are. Those are the tools, right? So so I think that our biggest issue is utilizing the budget to where it's needed most. We talk about education as an apex priority. You know, I've been in government since 1996, guys. So when we took over, I started in the Department of Education. So I can tell you each and every plan, 5-year plan from that time. All of the government's plan, you can Google, every president spoke about education being a priority. What we didn't do is to say, if education is a priority, how do I hold? So when the cabinet ministers come to the table, I say to the Department of Health, what percentage of your budget goes to education so that you implement school health policies in the schools? Children are vaccinated, children, their teeth are checked, the eyesight is checked. So what aspect of that health? Public works, you build things. How much of your budget is focused on building schools for education and making sure that they've got sanitation, they've got, so you talk to water, so that even before they talk about what they're doing everywhere else, they're talking about what is their contribution to education, so that the Department of Education focuses on the task of learning and teaching. So that's the first thing. I think we pay lip service to serious things. When we talk about the importance, we then leave it to education to figure it out. But education doesn't build, they don't put water. That's why they still have pit toilets. That's not their job. It's not the Department of Basic Education. You know, so Department of Agriculture, how do we make sure that we teach our children food production, sustainable food production, so that you are able to get each and every department to allocate resources that prioritizes education. What you then say to education is that, what is this world that you are preparing our children for? And how are you going to make sure that our children navigate this world? So you need skilled teachers. Remember, we moved from closing teacher colleges, and then we reopened them because we're not consistent in what we want. So every delay, like I said, takes the country back. Because you cannot, I saw a question about countries that plan for 50 years, etc. But also what they do is that they teach their children skills to be versatile. They teach their children problem solving skills so that they're able to adapt. They don't teach children content. They don't teach children mame mimomu only or meskiteach only. They make sure that they provide resources so that children are problem solvers. That's why Pindile was talking about how she could navigate the world, because here we give you skills to solve things, to experiment with things, because the world is this today. No one knew we were going to have COVID. But the young people that had the greatest foundation are the ones that are developing the apps that we're using today. It's not old people. It's young people who learned, they didn't learn technology. They learned how to be versatile and know where to find information from. So I think, so what I'm saying is that our problem is political will. Our problem is not absence of resources. Our problem is corruption. Our problem is that when we have benefited from NSFAS, those of us that benefited from NSFAS, when we work, we forget that Nomtandas, who is entering the schooling system, must also benefit, and we're not contributing back to NSFAS. So as a society, until we understand the importance of education and what my role as a parent and my role as a government official, as a public servant, not as a civil servant, as a public servant, is to service the public. My role as a person who's supposed to build, who's supposed to put those Jojo tanks during COVID, my role is not to eat the money and then go and get Jojo tanks that are going to fall because the children are going to die. So there's a moral fiber thing, there's a political will thing, and I think there's a lack of hunger for us as a people to fight for our own and say, not in my name.
Sure, that's quite a mouthful, Siskuku, and I was just taking notes. And I think one of the things that you touched on is skilled teachers, right? I think they did a study a couple of years ago where they were saying some of the maths teachers were unable to actually do grade 4 maths. So how do you then expect them to then teach? Or if you're going to focus on STEM, and if you're going to focus on technology and 4IR and all these wonderful things that are happening, if you've got teachers that can't do maths, and what does that mean? What does that mean for society? And I'm going to just give it to you, Pindi Legangane, to just touch on, what can we do differently? And what can we do differently? I mean, we've seen in the public sector, and Osiskuku mentioned it, it's not a matter of budgets, right? There's always a budget allocated to education, yet we are still not getting it right. And we speak to free education, but then maybe free education doesn't talk to quality education, which speaks to your earlier point where it talks about, are you actually an employable graduate? What skill set do you have? I mean, we talk about food shortages in future years. If we don't know how to do agriculture and plant, I mean, we can be the smartest people, we're going to die from hunger. So I just want to, just hand it to you to just touch on what can we do differently and what can we introduce over and above the fact that we need to give people access in terms of funding.
Sure. Two things, maybe three. I'll see if I can merge these. But what Gugu just said about political will, right? We're having leaders who like to plan, who are happy to do a 20-page PDF of a 5-year plan. Just a plan. After 5 years, there's another plan, there's another plan, there's another plan. We don't have implementers. Don't have this, it's called monitoring and evaluation. What did you say you are going to do? Did you do it? Prove it to us. Prove the impact. So we are not in that gear. We want to go into a meeting, have a good presentation, and be like, oh my gosh, thank goodness it's done. Okay, my boss is happy, I'm getting my bonus. And we take for granted the responsibility as leaders in these strategic departments, how you have the ability to really propel the country forward. You have the opportunity to do that, and they don't, because they want to, like she said, steal the money, get a 10%, a kickback there and there. And it's absolutely sad, because if you think about it, the youth of 1976, they were not fighting for themselves. They almost had resolved that, you know what, I'm not going to win, so it's over for me. But I will not let it be done to my younger brother. I will fight for the next generation. So we are really benefiting from the blood and sweat of that generation. So as young people now, as leaders now, we need to start thinking like that, to say, you know, people who build these beautiful buildings, these cathedrals, they're not building it for themselves. They're building it for the next generation. So what are you doing for the next generation? We are so obsessed with ourselves that we forget about the next generation, which I think is absolutely sad. And you're right to say we might be on certain aspects of education, the smaller soft skills like agriculture. So with our project, we don't only just give people, for example, gadgets. We say we are going to have school gardens. And we are going to make sure that you're not just having a school garden where you can harvest and get a distribution from the produce. We are going to teach you about business management. We are going to teach you about budgeting. We are going to teach the young people about biodiversity. We change the relationship young people have with the land. So that going to school is not to go and learn what is a verb, what is a noun, how do you multiply X, Y, but it's about how do I solve problems. And I think once we understand that education can help you solve problems, you are going to have a different mentality, even among the youth, whereby we are not seeing young people in school uniforms committing crime, fighting, bullying each other after school, and you see young people gathered up. Now there's a fight after school, because school will be different. School will be this empowering space. So I really think it's important that saying there must be alignment in our government to say Department of Agriculture come to the table. Most schools in the rural and the township areas, land, the school grounds are huge. How can we use that portion to have a school garden? How can we do that? How can we ensure that if we give, for example, gadgets to the school, they are safe rooms so that the gadgets are safe and not stolen? So there are so many moving parts to the education issue, but I still go back to my point to say it is all hand. As Upindile, I have a responsibility not to myself but to the next generation, and that goes for the politician. That goes for the private sector, because even the private sector, they love to have this PR. We are opening a multi-purpose center as part of our CSI. There we go. This is what we do. But monitoring and evaluation, are you doing what you said you're going to do? And is there impact? Because it's not saying we're scared of results. What if we didn't do better? We didn't do a job. It's about saying what lessons learn. How do we best serve this community? Because our community, they're not just full of consumers, potential customers for us as a private sector, but they're people, and we need to make sure that we get more than just profit from them. We actually empower them, because when you empower your community, it's easy for the community then to be loyal to you as a brand, as a business. So really, it's complex. It needs all stakeholders of society to be on board, and there has to be, like Sister we said, alignment in the departments, different departments in government. Thank
Sure.
you.
Thank you so much. That's quite a mouthful. I'm just thinking back a couple of weeks here in Gauteng, where we actually had an incident where there was a school that 7 years later still did not have irrigation. I mean, it had to take a private sector or someone from the private sector to just go there and actually build a borehole, right? And it was actually, I think they said it costs, I'm just quoting from the top of my mind, but I think it was less than 150,000, which is funds that are readily available in the government to actually you be utilized for such situations, but they're not. And I'm gonna go back to just use this Google, because like you said, since 1996, you have seen this movie just role play over and over again. What is it? And I know that when you don't know, it's often said that if you don't know better, you cannot do better, right? So what is it that our government and people that even know are not held accountable to deliver on the basics that they need to? I mean, I've just used this example now that for 7 years, and this is not, I mean, it's not unique. We still have children that are falling into pitfalls and passing on. with all this, with everything that has happened over the years, we still have those problems now. So you having seen the movie, being inside, what is it about accountability that then people are not willing to just step up and actually say, I'm appointing this person and I'm assigning this to you. I'm assigning this responsibility to you. It's not just for yourself. I mean, it's for a whole country. So I'm going to hold you accountable to these key performance indicators. Can you please just expand a bit on that?
I think there are a number of, there are probably a variety of responses. There were one of which would probably get me into trouble, but I will say so anyway. I think once you, the party system in government is such that people don't hold each other accountable. There's a place for unions are active, and they should, be talking about the employment rights, etc., and pay. But once you start being held to ransom, and you are unable to hold people accountable, then there is a problem, because these are the people that you are either in a tripartite agreement with, or you are in a branch meeting with somewhere. So that lack of accountability is a problem, right? The instruments in government don't work because people don't want to make them work. You can have the best instrument, but if you are not making them work, you can't make them work. But I think our biggest problem is us as a people. You see, we don't hold public officials to account. We don't hold government to account. We give the same government that messes us up multiple chances to continue messing us up and promise us the same thing that they promised us in 1923. And we don't make them feel the pain of accountability. And even at a school level, as parents, we don't hold schools to account. You will see a child in a mall. No one stops that child in a mall in a uniform. We're holding hands with some other Molanyana boyfriend. We all pass because it's none of our business. No one checks the uniform and says, this child is from Skanuntuan. Teacher, what is happening? So I think that we don't have a culture of holding each other accountable for services that we deserve. And so if I know that nothing is going to happen to me, why should I change? There's always a saying in government that once you're in government, it's difficult to get you out. It's a permanent employment, because you go through hoops before you can fire someone, right? Because the system doesn't allow it. So there is no culture of accountability, even at cabinet level. If I can't remember whether it was President Mbeki or which one, who came with performance contracts even for cabinet ministers. So if you don't deliver textbooks, you should go. Why are we having a conversation? Now, if you at the head are not holding your ministers accountable, no one is going to hold other people accountable. But I also wanted to say to your question, Kosi, about what needs to change. You see, for me, I think some things are basic. Education is very predictable. The curriculum is there. So you need to get the right teachers who are qualified to teach the subject that they teach, and who turn up on time to teach. You need to get engaged learners who want to be in class. You need to get a curriculum that, even though you implement it as it is, but you open it up to other people. So the role of public sector is to introduce these innovations to us. Schools are so closed that they don't allow people to come in and say, you know what, coding is coming. It doesn't have to be during the school hours. The schools end at 1:45, guys. The rest of the day, it's time to do extracurricular activities, co-curricular activities, where young people experiment with. We're going to introduce coding for girls. And it's not going to be a subject. It's going to be something that everyone who is at OLEC goes through, because we think it's a necessary skill. And if you want to take it up in future, then you can take it up. But we're not doing it as ourselves. You start looking out for partnerships. So you go to people who are saying, we're interested in introducing. So that's how you get innovations in school. You open it up for people who are able to then reinforce the foundations that you have in the school. You also have continuous learning for your teachers. Your teachers can't have gotten that certificate that they got in Mzukwana, and they're still teaching using it. There should be a system in your education system that refreshes them. What are the new technologies that are coming? How are you solving problems in 2021? You know, what is it that, because then they get excited and they introduce it to young people, and then it becomes a cycle. And then you get much more prepared young people, but you get interested teachers who are interested in teaching and learning. So opening up the schools and getting industry to do what industry does best, which is to innovate and help the schools to innovate. And us as parents, we parent. Let's hold Mtonjeni accountable. We stand at the gate, or 8 value gate, basic things like that, instead of us taking the children out for shopping.
And Ma, I agree so totally with that. Sorry, I was just it looks like I couldn't see the chat session and there were questions that were flowing. But I'm just gonna ask them then as then maybe closing questions, and I'll pose one to you, Pindi, and I'll also pose one to Usis Gugu. And sorry, I'm just reading from my phone because I can't see it on my laptop. It's I think one of the comments that we got from Charmaine, it says, true, most children in school are not taught to grasp concepts. They are not taught with understanding. Still industrial revolution type still industrial revolution type education where children sit in rows and recite what teacher says without knowing what they are saying. And I think this is at the back of the conversation we had earlier. I suppose as a closing statement, what's your view on that, Pinned?
I would like to really urge everyone who is part of the education process, value chain, teachers, parents, right, to really see education as this key that will be a token out of your dysfunction, your poverty. And really, in terms of teaching young people how to really comprehend what they're learning, comes with this thing of language. When we teach our young people in the rural areas, when we teach them about the mouse, for them to get it, we have to say, "Uyalibona igundwane, sinyakazisa igundwane, upress." We make sure that they really understand, because for you to change someone's mindset, they have to get it first in their everyday language. They have to understand. And then you can say, now that you realize igundwane, sizoyibiza nge-mouse. And now you can continue to then introduce English as a way of instruction. So really emphasizing the power of the mother tongue, especially for foundation phase. For me, that's really important. But I think I saw a question: are we saying free education will never work? I don't think there's some education. Someone always pays. Someone always pays. So we have to make sure that the government creates a conducive environment for public-private partnerships, whereby the private sector sees education as a platform or as a space to invest. So once we all understand the importance of education, how the key, it will be easy to get a buy-in even from the private sector to say invest in our education, so that people who can't afford won't have to pay. So I don't think there's something called free education. I believe in strategic public-private partnerships. And if we want young people to fully understand and immerse themselves in learning, do it in a way that it's easy for them to understand, and make sure that it speaks to their lived experiences. Hence, I made the example earlier about introducing things like agriculture, school gardens, in school, so that there's something that you can see how this education is really empowering. So if I go to school, I will learn maths, science, nutrition. I will learn how to plant. That for me will truly be a game changer in the first instance, over and beyond keeping our leaders accountable, aligning the different departments. Thanks.
Thank you so much for that. It's really words of wisdom from you. And Sis Gugu, just a parting question from our chairperson, Sis Triforsa. On planning, how can South Africa learn from the likes of China, where they plan for 50 years and align? Oh, I think we already addressed this one. Sorry, I want to give you a different one because I think you already spoke to this one earlier on. I'll read one from Refilwe, your alumni. She says, Sis Gugu, OLEG as an institution offers free and quality education. What do you think the school is doing right in terms of implementation, and can the model be used in broader South Africa?
Thank you, Cousin. Thank you, Refilo. I think for us as a school, education is a canvas. Firstly, I've always said in every platform, I think I have the best teachers in the world. They're not only qualified to teach the subject that they teach, but they are invested in the education and learning of their children. So they're not approaching education from a textbook point of view. They provide our girls with a variety of resources to work from. And so we get our girls to experiment. So they do research, they experiment with solutions, and they're always challenged to think much more broader than ordinarily they would think. And I think the best thing that we do at OLEG is to allow the girls to do anything that they want to do, because you see, part of the education system is not just text. It's playing sport, it's doing arts, because the arts facilitates learning. It's dance, you don't have to be a dancer. So what we give at OLEG is a belief that you can be anything that you want to be, and you must take that opportunity. And girls at OLEG will tell you when they're here that they're always complaining about, oh, it's so much, it's so much. It's only when they go out that they realize that actually having all of those things to do provided them with an ability to be broader than any child who was just provided with just a textbook. So your teachers are always the engine. Your infrastructure is always the engine. We have, and we're fortunate, and I will underline that and say that it's not the best example, because we are really well-resourced. So we've got laboratories. So our children are not like reading about an experiment. They experiment. They see how it looks like. But we give an opportunity for our children to do and be and experiment. But we also hold them the standards high, because one of the things that if the standard is low, the children will go towards that standard. Remember, the children that come to OLEG are not special children. Children that come to OLEG are children, like Upindi was saying, are children who've gone through, come from the most in terms of their circumstances. So they don't become better just because they're now at OLEG. But they're hungry. They know what they want, and they know what they want to be. And so we are not taking different children and making them better. We're taking the same children, but showing them that it doesn't matter where you come from, you can be the best. All we can do is to create this platform. And we all the time, we say our children read. You read anything, newspaper, just read all the time, because you know what books do? The books open the world for you. You start being curious. A lot of the programs that we implemented OLEG are because the girls researched and said, ma'am, why are you not having, there's this AI thing, why are we not having something like that? And we, so it's how you have a partnership between your children and the teachers and the community, just to make sure that everything is aligned. But without fail, teachers are my game changers.
And teachers are a game changer. They're the one that gives us hope. Thank you so much, guys, for your pearls of wisdom. Sorry, guys, that I missed so many of your questions. I guess I'm also one of those that are technologically challenged because I could not see it until it was sent to me on the side. Thank you so much for all your participation. I'd like to now hand over to Charmaine to sort of wrap up and give us closing remarks. That's it from you guys. Thank you. Cheers.
And Kosi, I will say to refill, yes, one of the things that I promised Ms. Winfrey is that we are going to make sure that what we do at OLEC becomes a template for what quality education should look like. So that's how we're going to pay the gift back to her. So that when people say, what does quality education look like? They look at OLEC.
Thank you. And I think they do. I think it is a template for what can be achieved. Thank you so much, guys. I'll just hand over to Charmaine now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kosi. Oh my goodness, I am like hanging on to your every word. I had just thought, Sis Gugu, and I'd actually thought, Pidile, I was just going to pop in for 10 minutes and then rush off and do something else. And I've texted my other meeting in the US saying, sorry, I'm caught up. I'm going to join you. I'm done. I am absolutely inspired and in awe. This is a very important conversation for us, Pindile and Sis Gugu. Because I think one of the reasons why Triforce and I, together with the International Women's Forum of South Africa, we are the South African chapter of the Global International Women's Forum. We galvanize different institutions, specifically the Johannesburg Stock Exchange and various listed companies, to start to galvanize for economic emancipation for women. Because we're starting to see that even, and I know Triforce has been quite vocal in this aspect around the 40% set aside the president announced for procurement is not enough. We are saying 50% or nothing at all. And we were quite fortunate through Mama Mbeki, who's actually our patron for IWSSA South Africa chapter. We actually launched the Young Leaders Committee. And we've got all of the young leaders who are dialing in today. And one of our key purposes as Google was actually to build and develop the next generation of females. Because you and Pindile are so spot on. We can't keep sitting in our chairs and not hand over that baton eventually. And I fully concur. I think for me, democratizing education through whatever means possible is one of the most important aspects that we all need to drive. And again, I love the reference that you made, Sis Gugu, around not just any education, but quality education. Because that, again, is something that we consistently see is missing. And we know even now during lockdown, it was our children who progressed, who are in the Model C schools, but children out there in the rural areas, 90% of them could not continue with education. And I agree with your point. We are further holding our children back. We are further actually increasing the divide that they have with their competitors, even on the continent, when we look at how we are actually leading. I think you are right. After decades of quality education, after decades, I think, of driving for change, quality education is still the Achilles heel for the continent, and I think specifically for South Africa. And I was saddened to actually go through a similar process. We're looking at fellows for the Be Good Foundation of Global Citizen. And again, when you look at applications, without even looking at where the applicants were from, I could see the ones that came from South Africa and the ones that came from the rest of the continent. It's very easy to pick up when you ask children to start to qualify or quantify their point. So spot on, quality education. I love the reminder also and the emphasis, I think, Pindile, that you made, that it's so important that we enable critical thinking, that we actually encourage curiosity amongst our children, instead of just having them really regurgitate something that they were actually taught. And I think Sis Gugu emphasized the point of immersion. And I love the idea that you gave with Oleg, how they actually drive and lead with immersion. Again, Pindile, you are right. If it's to be, it's up to us. So we have to get involved. And I like your reference that you made to triple Ps, and that indeed the public sector needs to lean in a bit more with the private sector and figure out how do we actually ensure that we're not just striking on goals. Because I know as well that having been in the private sector for over 30 years, we love to score our own goals. We also love to go into our social and ethics committees and write our audit reports and show how amazing we are out there in the sector without always having consulted and ensuring that our true stakeholder at the end of the day is the girl child or the girl boy, and they're not always benefiting from these own goals. So that's definitely something for us in the private sector to take back and actually reflect on. I also like the whole culture of accountability. Says Gugu, that's amazing. The structure that needs to be put in place to drive ownership, accountability, responsibility, and I think most importantly, passion. I went to a public school. I went to a government school in the 80s in Durban. I'm from Wentworth and Newlands East, and I went to a government school in Newlands East. And again, the thing that I take away today is the passion those teachers have for teaching us. The deep passion and your point as well, that we were taught that when you leave the school, you go and take off your uniform. Don't get into that street and get up to no good when you're wearing my uniform for Newlands East Senior Secondary. The principal pushed that point forward. I still don't understand to this day. We had to do this process and this exercise with the grasshopper and name that grasshopper. I still don't know what that's contributed to my current life. I'm still trying, and that thing drove me mad, trying to understand what the different parts of this grasshopper was. It was a key element of my schooling that I don't get. But I also love your point, Pindile, around how we have to ensure that education has to be a disruptor. It has to enable us to reimagine our lives, and also incorporating the mother tongue into the learning process is so phenomenal. I like that. And again, I think, how do we start to come together? I think to lead from the front, because I think that's still significantly what's missing. And again, as parents, I think, how do we start leaning in a bit more, not to interfere with the school around, oh no, our children must travel here, or no, you know, they must put their hair in ponytails. That's the least of the issues we should be driving with schools. But how do we get more interested in, you know, I remember Sipho Maseko, the CEO of Telkom, when I still worked there many years ago, was saying that of the 11 official languages, we need another one as a 12th language called coding that has to be incorporated to encourage critical thinking, to encourage curiosity, and how do we ensure that uptake? So I think Traforce and I and the team have got a lot of planning and walking away from this conversation to go and look at. And I think we're quite interested in actually having even a follow-up conversation, Try, because I think this is quite crucial. And I remember that narrative, Siskuka. I remember somebody in one of the board meetings relaying this narrative that if you want to hide money from a Black person, hide it in a book. And I remember being so taken aback and offended when this person said that. But the more I actually talk to relatives and the more I talk at platforms, I understand that people don't read. Our people are just not interested in reading, unless it's about a celebrity and it's a gossip story and it's an influencer. Then we very quickly run to the different platforms, but we're not using these platforms to democratize education. So thank you very much for these pearls of wisdom. We really appreciate your time this evening. Thank you both so much. And our phenomenal facilitator, Kosi Bambisa, you did an amazing job. I think you've got a job for life now with the YLC team. Thank you very, very much. We really appreciate it. And thank you to everyone and to everyone who joined us. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. Thanks, Try. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sis Gugu. We are coming to your school for mentorship.
Let's talk offline. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Great initiative, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Kosi. Thank you, Pindile.